Pocono 96.7 studio is powered by Stroud Media. Stroudsburg's premier business phone system provider. Find us online at stroudmedia.com. If it has an IP address, it's our business.
96.7 WABT.
The Poconos. 7:04 on a Tuesday morning. I love when political candidates come on the radio to talk about the issues. And Autumn Pangia is with me this morning, the Libertarian candidate to be state rep in Pennsylvania's 176 district. She's here with me in the studio now. Let's take a little time to meet Autumn and find out what she's all about. Good morning. Hey.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so nice to see you. What town do you live in now?
So I live in Saylorsburg, and it's actually the same town that my parents moved us to when I was 11.
Where were you originally from?
So most of my childhood was spent in Easton. We moved around a little bit. I lived in California for 6 months, almost a year as a child. Families from New York and New Jersey, like almost everybody else around here.
All right. Let's hear a brief bio. What have you been doing with yourself since school?
So I let's see, where did I start? I had my son when I was 20 years old, so I started my family really early. From there, I worked for Northampton Community College. I'm so old. I once held a job where the official title was secretary.
Oh, you don't hear that anymore. That's gone the way of Guy Friday. You just don't hear these terms anymore.
Right. Yeah, I tell people I'm a classically trained secretary. I got this when it comes to taking notes and meetings and stuff. I went from working for Northampton Community College. I was a realtor then, and I managed to sustain my son and I for 2.5 years on just realtor income, which I consider a success.
Great.
But I wasn't so successful that I could afford health insurance. So I went back into the 9 to 5. All right. And that's when I ended up over at Santa Fe Pasture, and I was with them for about 10 years. And while working there is when I got my customs broker's license.
Gotcha. So you've been a busy woman since
I have, yes. I completed my degree then, too, later on in life as an adult.
So what sort of degree do you have now?
It's business administration. It's your basic.
You want to represent the 176 district. What townships does that comprise?
Okay. It's Tobyhanna, Tunkhannock, Jackson, Hamilton, and then all the West End townships, Ross, Eldred, Polk, and... who am I leaving? Chestnuthill.
Very, very good. Is this a recently rejoined district? Do they play around with this one?
It is, yes. So some of the folks I know in Ross Township, it's a different incumbent than it would have been prior to.
A lot of folks just don't know, I think, what district they live in these days.
Yeah, who knows what?
You had to get signatures, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yep.
So what issues are most important to you?
So really what's gotten me into, what drove me to run in the first place, the issue that's most important is individual autonomy. I mean, we shouldn't be subject to mandates from our government that tells us about the personal choices that we should be making.
That's the benchmark of the libertarianism, right?
It sure is.
Explain what libertarianism is. I know liberty is a priority, but you take it from there.
So we definitely believe in less government. We would like to see a lot more free market opportunities. When the government tries to press an issue before the market has met a natural demand, it turns a lot of things upside down. Like you and I were talking off air a little bit. That's how I describe how we've gotten into the student debt crisis, honestly.
All right. What else with libertarianism? How do you feel about taxes? What does the back of your shirt say?
I wasn't sure.
I think I read that.
Yep, taxation is theft, right? So, and that's a crazy idea that makes a lot of people short circuit when you say taxation is theft. But the truth is, do you have a choice to pay it?
No.
Are you under threat of violence if you don't pay taxes? Will you go to jail and be fined? Right, potentially.
So you don't believe in taxation? Well, you know what the next question is. So how do we pay for the fire department? How do we pay for the cops? So how do you pay for roads?
Well, the same way that those things were paid for before taxation.
Which
right?
is? Well,
so it's voluntarism is a big focus of the Libertarian Party. If we were to flip the switch and turn off all taxes tomorrow, things would go haywire for sure, right? That would be too extreme of a way to transition into eliminating all taxes for sure. But the way that you know that this is a good idea, that this is something that you might want to get on board with, is if I pose this question to you. What's your favorite government benefit, your favorite government program. You don't have to answer, just whatever it is, put it in your mind.
All right.
Now, would you be willing to stop government funding for that program if you never had to pay taxes again ever in your life? So there's a little extreme thought experiment.
She's asking you, the listener.
Yeah. That's an extreme thought experiment that puts you in the mindset of going like, oh, okay, wait a second. Maybe this is something to consider.
Oh, yeah. So no municipal budget at all? I mean, I just don't get that.
Well, right. So the community would have to assemble to organize voluntary contribution to the things that we care about, right? I mean, we still are participating in charity all over the place to meet the needs that the government isn't meeting, that we really kind of think they should be in the first place, with as much as we're paying in taxes.
Talking to Autumn Pangia this morning, the Libertarian candidate to be state rep in the 176th district. Your website says you're the only candidate in the race with a history of condemning mandates and business closures. So why don't you explain that?
So in 2021, my employer started their rhetoric that made it clear that they were coming towards a position of mandating vaccination for the employees, even though we had pretty much all been working from home this whole time. And there were people who had previously had COVID, who all the reasons why we think now today it's acceptable to say that someone might not have wanted to get the vaccine, even people whose doctors advised they not get it. And the doctors were too afraid to put on paper that they advised against it to help them with an exemption request. And it was then that I was activated to stand up for my community, because I could see around me that there was a lot of fear. A lot of people wanted to push back against this policy. So I did step out boldly, stepped out of line at my place of employment.
So what'd you do? You left, right?
I ultimately did leave, yes, because now you can't say for sure if the actions that I took, but I believe it did lead to a chain of events that brought about low compliance rate, and they ultimately did not mandate at my division, but they did at other divisions. So I was just... My relationship with my employer was morally bankrupt. I couldn't stay anymore. And so my husband and I...
Well, do you believe that a private company has the right to do that, to take care of their employees like that, if they seem fit?
Yeah, and so this is where you're going to hear that I'm going to give you an honest answer. Okay. Yes, they do. Yes, because a private company can require such things if they want, but I don't feel that they should be supported by the community at large when they violate such personal...
Well, that's fair enough. You don't think the government should get involved with a decision like that, right?
Well, absolutely not. No, and that's part of what was happening, right? The government was signaling strongly to the community and to corporations that this is what they wanted. And so I described it as corporations carrying water and basically paying the tab that they had owed to government, because we know there's a very symbiotic relationship between corporations and government. And that's why I'm here, because I'm absolutely sick and tired of it.
You say that you're the only candidate who fully supports bodily autonomy in all forms. So explain that further. What do you mean by that, Autumn?
Yeah, so, and this is something that's a pretty common theme within the Libertarian Party. There are many pro-life, right? So this is what we're getting at in all forms, and all those forms, including the right to abortion, whether you're pro-life or pro-choice. We urge people to recognize that this is stepping into one of those areas of personal decisions of healthcare. Even if you don't feel that abortion is healthcare, it sure does involve working with a doctor, and we don't want the government getting involved in those relationships. So whether it's abortion rights or vaccine requirements or even wearing a mask for someone who isn't sick, it's not anything that the government should ever get involved in, and I'm very consistent on that.
Do you see any difference, though, with an airborne pandemic when the danger is in the air? Is there any difference there? Do you draw the line at all there?
Well, I think that if what you're referring to specifically was what we went through with COVID, not everybody was at the same risk.
All right.
And when you make people wear a mask and they're not even sick, and when we pretend that cloth masks are acceptable, we knew in early 2020 that an N95 mask was what was necessary to prevent transmission of the coronavirus. All right. But then they wanted us to pretend to forget that and just shut up and put a cover on your face. And it was just, it became very toxic in our community. I think none of us can deny that.
Were you always a libertarian, even in your youth, or did you see the light and have an epiphany sometime here?
I was raised by parents who really promoted some pretty strong libertarian perspectives, and I've been a registered libertarian for most of my adult life.
Did you read Ayn Rand books?
So Ayn Rand actually is someone who's
Ayn
always
Rand,
been...
I'm sorry, you're right.
It's
A-Y-N,
is
you're right.
someone who's always been very interesting character to me, yes. Fountainhead. I'm not a kind of person who likes to sit around, so reading, but so thank God for audiobooks.
It's tough to find time to read these days.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of libertarians look to her, and Atlas Shrugged and all that. As
well,
forebearer of the movement. So how do you feel about no smoking policies and stuff like that, and secondhand smoke and no smoking in restaurants? How do you feel about that stuff?
Well, so that's another libertarian principle is that you should be able to do whatever you want as long as you're not impeding on the enjoyment of your neighbors and their space, right? And it's kind of tough to smoke on this side of the room and not bother the person on the other side of the room. So I think it's just a matter of being polite to your fellow neighbor, fellow citizen.
All right, very interesting. Autumn Pangia is here. We'll take a quick break and spend a little bit more time with her. She is the Libertarian candidate to be state rep in the 176th. Stick around.
I did a site visit, and the space is absolutely incredible.
Este's Reiki Clinic is opening another studio across town.
But there's a lot to wrap up.
But staffing an entire office requires more than just deep breathing.
Receptionist and at least 4 new practitioners.
Indeed can help them hire great people fast.
I need Indeed.
Indeed you do. We instantly connect you with quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description. Visit Indeed.com/credit and get $75 towards your first sponsored job. Terms and conditions apply.
Wendy's new French toast sticks are so delicious, some are saying that they're better than their mom's breakfast.
Excuse me. Did you just say Wendy's new French toast sticks are better than my breakfast?
Mom, is that you?
Answer the question.
I said some people are saying that because they're so crispy on the outside and fluffy on the inside and perfect in every way.
Uh-huh. And what do you think?
I think it's time to tell people to choose wisely. Choose Wendy's new sweet and crispy home-style French toast sticks.
That's still not an answer.
At participating U.S. Wendy's during breakfast hours.
It's Gary C., the Pocono's greatest hits. Pocono 96.7.
All right, spending some time with Libertarian Autumn Pangia. What a beautiful name that is. Your mom named you Autumn, and she had some libertarian tendencies. What, you have brothers or sisters?
I do. I have one brother.
What's his name?
Christopher, but even he has an unusual, it's spelled with 2 F's instead of a PH. Technically Christopher from our Norwegian heritage.
Well, that's cool. Yeah. I'm going to throw some topics out at you, and you tell me how you feel about the issue of, let's say, corporate bailouts.
So
this is on your website.
Yeah. Why would government bail out corporations? If the business is failing, it should fail.
All right. How about war and veterans?
So war is terrible. Even the little things, little interventions that we do to extend wars extends death. It's something that we should be getting out of as much as possible. One of the things that the Libertarian Party has been championing, whether we're in office or not, we're promoting Defend the Guard legislation, which would, at the very least, try to restrict the deployment of National Guard volunteers to active combat absent an official declaration of war by Congress.
How do you feel about recreational drugs?
I think that adults should be able to consume whatever intoxicants they like, and that criminalizing people for putting a substance in their body is a bad strategy. The war on drugs is an absolute failure. And as long as people are employed to execute the war on drugs, it will always continue.
Very interesting. My paycheck, they take out Social Security benefits, with every paycheck. How do you feel about the Social Security program?
Well, it is a concern, right? People are constantly talking about if it's even going to be there for us when it's our turn.
Very important to a lot of residents.
Yeah, I would really like to think that at some point we've really turned the culture into voluntary investments that people are making to support themselves in the long run. And again, if we weren't being so bled dry by taxation as it's currently in place, we'd be a lot freer to help each other out.
Some people think it's patriotic to pay taxes. I don't think you're in that camp, are you?
Well, who do you think put that idea in your head, Gary? that it's patriotic to pay your money to the government, right?
I did. I did. I'm going to ask you some questions that I ask a lot of the candidates who come up. Do you ever think we'll see a train coming out of Scranton and going through the area? Have you done any research on that at all? I'm just always interested to see how the locals feel about it.
I will, honestly, I've not done extensive research on it, but I've been here and I've been hearing about the train and this urban legend of the train coming to the Poconos. And I'm so sad for people who are new to the area, who think it's a new idea and get really excited about it. I think there's a lot of reason for us to be pessimistic about that, right?
All right. Okay. That's a realistic response to that. What would you do if you became a state rep in the 176? What's a priority for you? As soon as you took office, what would you do, Autumn?
Well, I'd like to really establish a process where we can engage in radical transparency.
Radical transparency?
Yeah. I mean, if I've got something that I've got to vote on, I would want to know what the people of the district think about it so that I can represent their interests. At this point, I think that we're putting D's and R's, Democrats and Republicans, in office and just letting them run wild. And I mean, while I've got my libertarian perspectives and I would love to use that platform to inform and educate the people, I don't think that there's a lot of two-way communication happening.
So you think there's a lack of transparency right now?
I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of people would agree.
Are you content with the state of the roadways in the area? This is another $64,000 question that I ask so many people who come through here, because a lot of bumpy rides around here on them.
Well, I live on a dirt road. So I've been actively living in a libertarian example of the people having to take care of their own roads in the first place. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it's a bumpy ride. How about if we stop taking everybody's money and giving it to our friends' organization, who's not really held accountable because the taxes are guaranteed to be funneling that way? And honestly, who wouldn't be happy filling their own darn potholes if they got to take their whole paycheck home? Again, this is an extreme and it's steps to get there, but this is
you could see
not
how
such a...
the elderly perhaps or disabled folks might have a problem doing that.
Oh, absolutely.
In their own potholes.
No, we definitely, the younger people on the road should be stepping up.
But you advocate for a lot of volunteerism,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of got to buy into this.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really there? If the guy down the block is taking care of the roads and the cops and the fire department, I don't have to? Is that the thinking? I just trying to wrap my head around this.
Well, I think that social capital needs to be something that people hold a little more dear, right? And that's the sort of future that we could potentially have if we moved in that direction.
So you do believe in an element of social responsibility?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Autumn Pangia, my guest this morning. You brought some notes with you? Anything you want to hit that I haven't asked?
Yeah, well, I just figured I'd mention some of the other things that were happening.
Good.
So later on today, Kinsley's is having their Grocers Day today. Which
ShopRite.
Yep,
the
ShopRite.
biggest ShopRite in America.
Yep, in Broadheadsville, Kinsley ShopRite is doing Grocers Day. It's to benefit the American Cancer Society. And today from 3 to 6, you can come on down and meet both me and our Eric Gerhardt is our candidate for U.S. Senate. He and I are both going to be celebrity baggers from 3 to 6 p.m. today.
So you'll be inside the store outside. You'll be inside if you're doing the bagging.
We'll be inside bagging. Mm-hmm.
So this is today at the Kinsley, ShopRite Kinsley's in Broadheadsville, correct?
Yes, it is.
And you're there from 3 to 6 if somebody would like to meet you. Mm-hmm. What else is going on? You have some other events, don't you?
Yeah. One other thing that I've got on the calendar that I think people might want to check out, there's a podcast called Don't Tread on Philly.
Okay.
I'll be recording with them on Monday, September 26th. And that's a podcast you can get pretty much anywhere.
Don't Tread on Philly.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
And you have a website or a Facebook page? How can people learn more about you?
Thanks. AP for pahouse.com. That's my website, and you can get links to all my socials and donate to my campaign, because unlike Democrats and Republicans, Libertarian candidates are not sponsored by big corporations throwing lots of money at us so that we put their interest over for So come on, check out AP for pahouse.com.
Is there a Libertarian committee that perhaps helps you out? Can I ask that question?
Yes, there is. Yeah, the Libertarian Party is organized, and we do have groups of people who are volunteering their time to help all of the candidates out with their campaigns.
Very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, look, I wish you all the luck in the world. I think it's very noble to run for office. It's something perhaps that everybody should do once in their lives. It takes a lot of courage, a lot of time, a lot of energy. I really respect that, and I appreciate you coming on this morning, Autumn, to learn more about you.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
How do you spell that last name again?
Pangia, Pangia.
Autumn Pangia on Pocono 96.7, 97.3.